11 minutes, I'm not sure what I can really meaningfully say, except to remind people that women do not have equal opportunities in many cultures, sadly, but we're working on it. In Buddhism, things started out pretty well. And I'm going to see if, can you see my screen? No,
Currently, no.
I was thinking of showing some slides, but it's not necessary. Okay, I guess that won't work. But in any case, Buddhist women are highly diverse because Buddhist traditions are highly diverse. They've developed mostly in Asia over the last 2,500 years in different cultures and religious environments. So Buddhism was transplanted, it started in India and was transplanted to cultures throughout Asia. Now, in the beginning, the Buddha assured his followers that women have the equal opportunity to achieve liberation or awakening. In his path, he established there are a few glitches in the beginning where he hesitated due to the cultural and social environment in India at his, back in the day, when women were considered property and really didn't have the freedom to move freely or to make their own decisions. They were first the property of their parents, their father, then the property of their husband, and then once their husband passed away, they became the property of their son, often expected to marry their husband's brother. So, the situation was pretty bleak. So when we look at Buddhist history, we have to be careful about reading our contemporary values back into these ancient traditions. What the Buddha's actions were considered completely radical and forward-thinking at the time, similar to Muhammad. Peace be upon him. Today, when we look with modern eyes on some of these teachings and events, it seems incomprehensible. But taken in context of the current situation for women in that day, actually, the Buddha's teachings were completely radical, to allow women to leave their husbands, leave their families, wander freely in search of the spiritual pursuit. And we have the stories, the earliest stories of awakening are actually the earliest poetry recorded by women in the world was Buddhist nuns who were singing songs of liberation and rejoicing at the freedom that they had to assert their independence and not to be forced into marriage. Many of them had actually been through horrible marriages and then chose the spiritual path when possible. So my perspective is that if women do not have religious rights, then they do not have human rights. Since religion is one right, the freedom to practice one's religion is a human right. If women do not have equal rights within a tradition, then we cannot say that their human rights are being protected in that particular tradition. Now, the Buddhist traditions are highly varied, as I mentioned, but the crucial point is that in some of them, women have the opportunity to receive full ordination. Full ordination for women was given by the Buddha himself about 500 years before Christ. And this tradition has continued up to the present day. Unfortunately, it was discontinued in some countries. And so we find that in Sri Lanka, Thailand, Burma, Laos, Cambodia, and Tibet, the lineage of full ordination for women was broken, or it never reached, for example, Tibet. The Himalaya mountains were treacherous for women at that time, and we simply didn't get the lineage to Tibet. So, but today we find that many Buddhist countries, particularly Vietnam, Taiwan, China, and Korea, have full ordination for women. And the Chinese diaspora, for example, Singapore, Malaysia, United States, Canada, these countries have fully ordained nuns. Now, why do we focus on nuns? Because obviously very few people will take this path in life to be a celibate monastic. And yet, it's important when we talk about human rights and rights for women, equality for women, because it sends a message to women that here are women who are operating independently, who are following the spiritual path with complete dedication, and they're doing, terrific work. For the last 30 years, we've had an international organization called Sakadita. It means Daughters of the Buddha. It's the International Association of Buddhist Women. And we have tried to raise the question of women's roles and opportunities within Buddhism. I'm happy to report that since 1987, when His Holiness the Dalai Lama himself opened the first conference, there have been tremendous, wonderful, very positive changes for women throughout the Buddhist world. Now, this is significant. People don't really generally give much thought to Buddhist women, but in fact, there are somewhere between 300 million and 600 million Buddhist women in the world. If we count China, it's difficult to count China because no one's sort of advertising their religion over there these days. But in fact, the reports I get is that Buddhism is flourishing in China, and I've been there several times and witnessed it myself. And women are really taking leadership roles. However, freedom of religious expression is another story. So within the tradition itself, women have taken their places. And even in those countries where they do not have access to full ordination, women, and particularly the nuns, are really doing tremendous work for the society in education, especially education of children, in counseling, and setting up women's shelters, and so many different directions, including, of course, spiritual direction. And we see now in this pandemic that spiritual direction is really a great contribution to the good of the world. Okay, when people were happy to waste their time with baubles, then they didn't think much about their spiritual life. But now that we're living from day to day, not knowing if we're going to be alive tomorrow, and having to at least completely reevaluate the meaning and purpose of our lives, then spiritual direction has become incredibly valuable. Unfortunately, we have millions of people who are now qualified to help guide people through such a crisis as this pandemic. So in a way, we need to separate religious equality for women and political equality and freedom. Because in places like China and Tibet, well, Buddhist women really do not have freedom. Many are living under incredible oppression, especially in Tibet, where, well, I suppose that all of you are familiar with the situation, but the situation there is really dire. Tibetans are not happy under a communist political oppression at all, and they've even, almost 200 people have immolated themselves in protest, hoping to gain the support of the international community. And this is not a Tibetan custom. It is not a Buddhist custom to immolate oneself, but out of desperation, lacking any voice, seeing their culture and their language and their very, lifestyle threatened under political oppression, they have actually sacrificed their lives. And unfortunately, the international community, very few seem to be listening. The United States did appoint a Tibetan ambassador, an ambassador to Tibet, which is a great step forward. There's been quite a lot of support in Congress for the Tibetan cause, but no one is ready to stand up to the world's, maybe the leading economic power, in fact. So this is the situation. We are working on a grassroots level to empower women, to try to help them get equal opportunities for education so that they will have a voice. We bring women together every 2 years from many different countries, many different religions, and many different Buddhist traditions, where they have an opportunity to voice their concerns, share their ideas, share their experiences with one another. And over the last 30 years, well, we can say 35 now, 33 years, they've gained confidence to express their ideas and to do more than they ever dreamed they could do. We've really accomplished much more than we ever imagined. So with this dream, I mean, we had a dream and it seemed impossible, but in fact, we've been able to build something really beautiful, an alliance of Buddhist women and allies all around the world. So that's the introduction to equality for women in Buddhism, gender equality. Oh, and then if we talk about LGBTQ, that's one more discussion, which maybe we'll get time later to discuss.